There were 3 games this Saturday in the Rugby World Cup in France. The first game was between Argentina and Chile. That's a Pool D game, and it was very interesting because we had to see what Argentina had up against the probably weaker side in Chile. And then we had a Pool C game between Fiji and Georgia, and boy, we were looking forward to this one. I thought this could have been a banana skin game for Fiji because after their other great performances so far in this year's Rugby World Cup, I just thought coming up against a team like Georgia could cause Fiji some problems. And then the third game of the day was between Scotland and Romania, Pool B game. Pretty much the result was already decided in a lot of people's minds, but it was a question about how well Scotland was going to play. I'm going to give a quick review of all those games right here in this video. Welcome to Inside Rugby. My name is Mark and I'm a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful sunny Cancun in Mexico. And it's another glorious day and another great day to talk about rugby, and we saw a full day of rugby yesterday, Saturday, and we're getting ready for another day today with 2 games in the Rugby World Cup. But I want to go through the games that were played yesterday and give you a quick review from my point of view, and we'll just see what actually ended up happening. Starting off with that game between Argentina and Chile. I think Chile's brought a lot to this Rugby World Cup, and it was the first time that 2 South American teams ever played at the Rugby World Cup, so a little bit of history there between these 2 teams yesterday. I don't think there was any ever doubt of who was going to win this game, but what I've been interested in this particular game was to see how Argentina would go and to see whether or not they would finally click into form, because I think it'd be fair to say that they haven't really found their feet in this year's Rugby World Cup, as a matter of figuratively speaking. And if we remember back to when Argentina had that great win against the All Blacks at Christchurch in New Zealand, and then they went on to beat Australia also recently in Australia, they haven't really reproduced that form in this year's Rugby World Cup. So it was going to be... Now, 2 things that happened before this game even started that I thought were really good moves from Michael Cheika. The first one was Nicolas Sanchez coming in at number 10. I think that was a really good move, because I've been saying in my videos we haven't seen the best from Santiago Carreras in this year's Rugby World Cup, and I think Argentina needed to change that one up. So it was good to see Sanchez coming in. And then the second one was Augustine Creevy getting a start in this game, and we all know what a fantastic leader he is. He's played over 100 games for Argentina, and I just think his presence on the field is a big thing for Argentina. So they got off to a really good start, Argentina, and they started putting the pressure on Chile pretty much from the first 10 minutes. And it was obvious what was going to happen. They wanted to play the game at pace and open the game up. But again, we saw from Argentina just those little errors coming into their game where they'd drop a ball or they'd miss a man, and also little discipline issues in the first 20 minutes or so of this game. But we got to half time, it was 24-0 to Argentina. And it was obvious not only were they going to win the game, but they were starting to play a little bit freer as well. And in that first half, we saw Chile under a lot of pressure, and in the 14th minute, Izquierdo got a yellow card for another stupid tackle. And I say stupid because we've seen it a lot in this year's Rugby World Cup. I don't know what it is with players these days. They go up around the shoulders and head, and they don't put their arms around properly. And of course, you're going to give yourself a high percentage of risk doing that. I'm not sure why tacklers are not taking the player from the waist down and pulling him to the ground. That's the good old-fashioned way of tackling, and it used to work back in the day, and I'm sure it would work now. We're seeing far too many high tackles and players going in with very bad technique close to the shoulders and the head, and there's just a high chance of risk that this is going to come off, and we saw it again with Chile. So a lack of discipline there. Izquierdo went off with a yellow card. He would come back later on, and it was just one of those things that Chile couldn't afford. They couldn't afford to be down to 14 men against Argentina. The second half got worse for Chile, and we saw Argentina score 35 points in that second half, and we saw Chile get 1 try in the 73rd minute to Duciant, so it was a consolation try. But Chile did deserved that try. They put some pressure on Argentina in that second half and got close to their line on a couple of occasions, and it was actually good to see them go over and score a consolation try in this year's Rugby World Cup, their last game in this year's Rugby World Cup. And it's been really good, as I said, to have Chile in this year's competition. Good for the game in South America, close to where I am, and it breathes a new life into the game of rugby in this part of the world. And the new competition that's going to be starting in this part of the world is going to be very interesting, because it's going to give these lesser nations an opportunity to get into the game and start to build and grow the game in their respective countries. So by having a country like Chile joining Argentina from South America in this year's Rugby World Cup, I think has been a thumbs up and a big winner for the game in general. And okay, Argentina scored 8 tries to 1 against Chile in this game, but again, I think the importance of having these teams at the Rugby World Cup is really good for the game. So I know a lot of you comment about, you know, how these games are just whitewashes, and a lot less of you watch my videos when I review these games, and I understand the reasons why. The top nations dominate, and that's because of their legacy in the game. And if we're going to build the game globally, then we need to have teams like Chile and Argentina and all the rest coming in to do that. And we need to get World Rugby to invest in these countries so they can attract the right players, the right development processes and coaches, so the game can really expand. So I think it's a great thing for countries like Chile to be here, and it's great for the game. So a resounding win to Argentina. Did they play a lot better? Well, hard to judge, isn't it, against this kind of competition. They looked okay. They ran the ball from a lot of places. They scored some really good tries. Sanchez was really good. He did some great things in open play. His kicking was really good in general play. I like him much better in that position than Santiago Carreras, and Carreras came on in the second half, and he did continue the trend. He did score a try, and all round a solid performance for Argentina. But they're going to come up against Japan next, and that's going to be the do or die game for both of those teams in this year's Rugby World Cup. And I think it's going to be a really interesting game. I'm not writing off Japan at all in this year's Rugby World Cup to beat Argentina in that Pool D decider. We know that England's gone through and already qualified from that pool. So there we go, a quick recap on that game. Good try from Chile, a good performance from Argentina without being outstanding, but it all comes down to next weekend now in that game between Argentina and the Cherry Blossoms. That's going to be a great one to watch. Rightio, the next game up on Saturday was Fiji against Georgia, the 14th ranked team in Georgia against the 8th ranked team in Fiji. And as we're starting to understand, these rankings don't mean too much, do they, in this Rugby World Cup? Teams can pull all sorts of surprises. And that's what we saw in the beginning of this game. And I tell you what, before this game started, I was thinking that Georgia might give Fiji a few problems, because I think Fiji might underestimate Georgia, and they've had those tough wins, of course, in those tough games. They beat England, they had that great win against Australia, they went close against Wales. So I think Fiji were kind of thinking, okay, we've gone up against those really top teams, and here we are with Georgia, and it might be a little bit easier. And when they came out onto the field, they just seemed like they were on island time, didn't they? They were just missing in action for the first part of that game, and it was a little bit like the Fiji of old, you could say. They were kind of wandering around and not looking structured at all, and Georgia went in there with their structure and their determination. They came out really wanting to play this game, and they were running the ball. I think they had probably all the possession in the first 10 minutes of this game, Georgia. They were all over Fiji, and I thought, wow, this is going to be really interesting. And then they started taking the points as they got them. They were only penalties, but they took those opportunities. And by half time, we saw Georgia out to 9 points to 0. And I thought, wow, Fiji are going to really have to come back. I thought they would come back because of their depth, but also because I thought Georgia had put so much into that first half when Fiji did start going, and it wasn't a total domination from Georgia in the first half. Fiji had their moments, and they started to play their normal brand of rugby that we all love, and they ran the ball from all sorts of different parts of the field. And what that did do, it made Georgia make a lot of tackles, and that sapped a lot of energy out of this Georgian team. It also created a couple of injuries, and Georgia had already come into this game with a few of their key guys missing, and they got a couple of injuries also in this game that really made a difference, I felt, because it put their reserves on quite early in the game. and on top of that high tackle count, it gave Georgia a bit of a hard time. So I think Fiji were also benefiting from that as the game went on. But 9-0 at half time, and the question mark was this Fiji team good enough to come back and do the business in the second half? Now, they were looking for a 4-try bonus win in this game, Fiji, to get through to the quarterfinals automatically, and they were going to be chasing that in the second half. So a couple of things happened in the beginning of the second half that made me kind of think a little bit, and maybe if you're watching from Fiji you can give me a little bit of an insight to this, because they pulled off Kuravoli, the halfback from Fiji, and they put Lamani on, and I haven't been a big fan of Lamani, not only in this tournament but the build up to the tournament as well. And I thought Kuravoli has been playing really, really well. In fact, his goal kicking has been outstanding. He did miss the first kick in this game, but his halfback play has also been very, very good. So I couldn't understand why early in the second half Kuravoli was taken off. Maybe he had an injury, I'm not too sure about that. But with Lamani coming on, didn't give me a lot of confidence, particularly if this game got tight and Fiji had to do some goal kicking to win the game. The other thing that happened early in the second half was Radraka got a yellow card for a stupid knock-on, deliberate knock-on and intercept attempt that he tried, and he found himself sitting on the bench for 10 minutes. So there we go, Fiji started off the second half in a fairly bad way. But it was around about the 48th minute that their captain, courageous, and I really like this guy, he's a fantastic player, Naya Sialivu, got up and scored a fantastic try again from a typical Fijian style of play, and Fiji were finally on the board and back into this game. And with Lamani getting the conversion, we were back to 9-7, and it was game on at that stage as far as I was concerned. As the game went on, I was watching in particular the number 10 for Fiji, Tila, because as I had mentioned in a couple of videos I made before the Rugby World Cup, it was really sad to see Caleb Muntz not get into this team because of his injury and having to return home, and Tila was put in there at number 10, and I haven't been very impressed with his play, and that happened again in this game. He had a couple of opportunities to find touch with penalty kicks, he didn't achieve that. And his general kicking in play when trying to clear for Fiji was terrible. He only got them 18 or 19 metres up the field, where some kickers in this game have been getting gains of around 50 or 60 metres. So yeah, Tila's a bit of a weak link for me in this Fiji number 10 position, and not sure if they've got some other options there. If you're watching from Fiji, let me know who else could slot in there, because I don't think he's the man if Fiji are going to get out into the knockout stages of this tournament. Anyway, Fiji got a penalty and they finally went ahead in this game, 10 points to 9. And we were 55 minutes into the game and Fiji was starting to get more and more opportunities, and Georgia were getting tired. That was very, very obvious. So at 10-9, you probably thought, well, next team to score is going to have the ascendancy in this game, and that was the case because it was Fiji scoring a great try. And that man, Levani Botia, what a fantastic pass. If you watch this one again in slow motion, you'll see the guy going to the ground with a couple of guys on his back. He pulled out this miracle backward pass from somewhere to Harbosi, who was coming onto it, and he scored a great try for Fiji, putting them out to 15 points to 9 at that stage. And it was really a fantastic pass from Botia. Not only his passing, but his general play in this game. Breakdowns, he was in there winning ball for Fiji. And as Fiji came to life in the second half, it was through Botia mainly that they were doing a lot of great work in the breakdowns, and they were really putting Georgia to the sword in that area of the game. I spoke about Mark Tila for Fiji, and he kind of consolidated what I was thinking when he tried a really, really silly drop goal towards the very end of the game in the last 5 minutes. And you could see the intent was to try and put the scoreboard out further for Fiji, but it was a terrible attempt at a drop goal, and he was very, very close to the post. Anyway, he didn't get it, and Georgia came back on attack. They got a penalty inside the Fijian half. They took the penalty kick, which was quite surprising, and they got back to 17 points to 12. One of my favourite players for Fiji is Tuiasova. He got sent off with a yellow card with about 2 or 3 minutes to go. A bit of a stupid, reckless tackle again. And Fiji were down to 14 men as the Georgians had an opportunity in the last minute. And isn't this what happens with Fiji? They keep us on the edge of our seats until the last minute of their games because anything can possibly happen. And Georgia went on a huge raid of attack down the left-hand side of the field, brought the ball back inside. One of their players, I think it was Nina Nashvili, kicked the ball through with an opportunity to score a try for Georgia in the last minute and potentially win the game. And the Fijian fullback got back there in time and kicked the ball over the dead ball line for the game to end. And we all gave a big sigh of relief. And the old heart rate, and every player on the field absolutely collapsed, and you could just see how much both teams had put into this game. It was a fantastic game of rugby. Two different halves, of course, with Georgia leading the first half and having the push on Fiji, I thought, although Fiji did come back in the end of that first half. But in the second half, Fiji started playing their natural game, and it was just a matter of time in which they were going to put a couple of tries together as Georgia got more and more tired, and it was unfortunate to see that. But hey, hats off to Georgia in this game. They played really, really well. I think they've played well in the whole tournament. Despite some of the score lines, they've really turned up. They're a team that's got an enormous amount of passion and energy and skill sets. I think they've got a lot of skill sets. They were a little bit unfortunate with injuries in this game and leading into this game. So they took the points when they were on offer. They didn't get across the Fiji try line on this game, but they played smart rugby and they did what they could with the skill sets that they have. So yeah, I'm very impressed by this Georgia team. And maybe some people need to sit down in European rugby and have a look at where they fit into the whole game, because I think it's a very important step for their development. And obviously they've got the passion and they've got the commitment there to do it. So well done to Georgia. Fiji, well, you got away with it. And now you have to handsomely beat Portugal, and you'll find yourselves into the quarterfinals. And once you get into that quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup, anything can happen. And I was just listening the other day to that great All Black, Richie McCaw, talking about that knockout stage of the tournament and how when a team gets in there and they know they've only got 3 games in which they could possibly win the Rugby World Cup, it throws a whole new dimension on the dynamics and the psychology within a team. So just getting to that knockout stage is such a psychological boost for any team. And knowing that just in that quarter-final, if they win 1 game of rugby, they can be in a semi-final of a Rugby World Cup, and anything can happen then. So yeah, it's all on. It's all on for this next weekend, and it's going to be really, really interesting in a very, very tight group in Pool C. And of course, we've got we've got Portugal against Australia today, which is another critical game in that Pool C. And we're going to find out what happens there. So yeah, a great game between Georgia and Fiji. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And just wish the Fiji boys would look after my heart a little bit better, because they put us on the edge sometimes, don't they? And then the last game on Saturday this weekend was the game between Scotland and Romania, and Gregor Townsend had made a lot of changes in the Scottish team to come in and play this game. And the reason for that is he wanted to give a lot of these guys the opportunity to put their hand up for selection in that big game that's coming up next weekend against Ireland, which is going to be a cliffhanger, of course, in Pool B. So it was good to see how Scotland were going to go. There was probably no doubt from the beginning of who was going to win this game. And Romania, another team that had been affected by injuries before this game even got underway, so they were missing a couple of their key players. And the other thing that was going to be interesting in this game, with Romania giving away 70 and 80 points for each game at the moment in this year's Rugby World Cup, was how was their discipline going to hold up in this particular game? Well, it took Scotland 8 minutes to get across the Romanian line in this game, and I must say in that first few minutes of the game, Romania played pretty well. They put some good phases together, but their defence was really strong as well. So they obviously came out with a lot of motivation and adrenaline going to try and keep the score at bay in this game, and they did that quite well in the first 8 minutes, I thought. But then Scotland scored their first try, and basically the floodgates opened from then. And as the game went on, Scotland built more and more into it, and a few players started to show their hand in the Scottish team. And I made a note during this game that I thought Ben Healy, the number 10 for Scotland, made a couple of really stupid errors in the first 15 minutes or so of this game. And I made a note to say in this video that I don't think he played very, very well, but he turned it around from then on, and he ended up having a really good game. So yeah, it just shows that players can start off a little bit poorly, but they can definitely turn around, and Healy did that for Scotland on this occasion. But Scotland went on a rampage, and by the time we got to half time it was 42 points to 0, and Romania started getting into disciplinary issues. They had 3 yellow cards in this game, which was pretty bad for them. One time they had 3 players off the field at the same time, so they were down to 12, but fortunately they got those players back and they were able to finish the game. I guess we've all been saying it in games like this, you can only play the team that's put in front of you, and that's what Scotland did on this occasion. 12 tries, 12 conversions, 11 of those to Healy and 1 to Horn, and a very good performance. Darcy Graham, I thought, was one of the standouts for Scotland on a team that there were many standouts, and I was very impressed with Hamish Watson. I thought he had a fantastic game, and he must put himself in the selection. Thoughts now of Gregor Townsend going into that Irish game, because I thought he was outstanding throughout the game. Breakdown, open play, leadership, he was doing a little bit of everything, was Watson, and yeah, he was one of the standouts for me. Darcy Graham, of course, getting 4 tries. Healy, as I said, came well in the game and started setting up some good set pieces and putting his players through angles, and also scoring a great try himself when he darted off under the post. So he played very well. But there was a lot of good Scottish players, I thought, in this team. Redpath was another one that comes to mind. Darge came on and played very well. So did Kinghorn come on and play well. So yeah, they were without some of their superstars in this team for Scotland this weekend, but they really did the job on Romania. So I think Gregor Townsend's got a really good headache now as he reviews and reflects on an 84-0 win by Scotland over Romania, and he looks at some of those players that might have put their hand up for the Irish game next weekend. Let me know if you're from Scotland or if you're a general rugby fan. Who do you think played well enough in that Scottish game yesterday to be selected against Ireland next weekend? It's going to be a huge game, of course, and Scotland are going to make sure they've got their #1 team out there to do the job on Ireland if they can. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. So a couple of players from Romania that caught my eye. Tamani, the centre, was big, and he did a couple of really good runs, putting the Scottish defence under some difficulties on a couple of occasions. Lama as well, another Tongan-born rugby player that's moved to Romania to play, and Motok in the forwards in the locking position. He had a good game, I thought, as well. You know, as we know, these smaller nations, they get to play so little international rugby and hardly any at this particular level. So having their involvement in the Rugby World Cup, I think, is a really good thing. And despite the big scores, they get a lot of experience from this. The coaches as well can go away and look at how they can improve their game. And hopefully World Rugby is going to step up and invest more in the smaller rugby playing nations to help them keep developing the game, because that's what the game needs. We want to see more competition across the world, and we want some of the big countries that have got the legacy of great rugby playing nations to get some competition from some others. So those that have seen Italy and Romania thrash this weekend, and Chile as well, I don't think we should be boo-hooing these nations. We should be getting behind them, supporting them. We want to see the growth of the game. Look at how many people turned up to support Chile against Argentina. They only get 300 people to watch their games back in Chile, and now they're getting thousands of people travelling to a Rugby World Cup from their country to watch the game, and that's exactly what we need to do to grow the game more across the world. So I'm a big advocate of that. I think we need to put more emphasis into supporting these smaller nations and making sure that they bring their level of play up, but also the interest in the game, so young kids in those countries, both girls and boys, pick up a rugby ball and start playing it. And a lot of these nations also are big soccer nations, football nations, aren't they? So getting rugby implemented in there and getting some of these kids across from soccer would be a really good thing. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. So it was a great Saturday of rugby in this year's Rugby World Cup, and 3 really good games. As I said, the Pool D game between Argentina and Chile, 59 points to 5 to Argentina in that one. 17 points to 12 to Fiji against Georgia in that classic Pool C game. And then 84-0 to Scotland against Romania in that Pool B game. So thoroughly enjoyed those 3 games. And so there you go, there's my quick summary of the games from yesterday. Drop me your comments, let me know about all of those teams and what you thought. I'd be really interested to hear from you. Okay, getting ready for another big day today. We've got Australia against Portugal, and then we've got the big one, South Africa against Tonga. That's going to be an interesting game in Pool B. and I'll be doing reviews of those games also in the not too distant future, so watch out for those. And after the Rugby World Cup, I'm going to be doing all I can to grow this channel even more around the world when it comes to rugby, getting inside rugby in all sorts of different levels. But I'll let you in on some of those secrets a little bit later on. Thank you very much for your support. I really appreciate it. Great to have a rugby community from across the world supporting this channel, and we can all perhaps help grow the game in some way or another. That would be a fantastic thing to do. Okay, I'm off now to get ready for today's game. I'll see you again really soon. Until then, stay safe and stay well, and keep enjoying the Rugby World Cup from France in 2023. Bye for now.